I tried to do my best to guard Larry Bird. It didn't work too well. He kind of schooled me a little bit. Take that for you. All right, I take that, Larry. There was sort of jump shot. I said, Dennis, you like that? I said, you know what, man, the hell with you.
Rodman's eccentric personality and on-court volatility made him hated by fans and non-fans alike. He was, however, a great defender, fantastic teammate, and one of the best rebounders to ever step foot on an NBA court. Among Rodman's exploits, he famously dyed his hair different colors whenever he felt like it, wore a wedding dress to promote his autobiography, once kicked a photographer sitting courtside, and got into several scraps with opposing players. Let's start our list with player number 6, Alonzo Mourning. Dennis Rodman and Alonzo Mourning didn't have a slow build-up. Their rivalry showed up the moment they started sharing the same paint. Rodman didn't care that Mourning was younger or stronger. He treated him like every other star big man he faced by going straight at him. Mourning played through the contact, but Rodman wasn't just physical, he was calculated. He grabbed, leaned, and clung to opponents like Velcro. He wanted Mourning off balance, and he didn't care how it looked. Their regular season matchups turned personal fast. Rodman baited him constantly. Mourning wouldn't let it slide, and games quickly turned into scrappy, slow-paced wrestling matches with hard fouls and extra elbows. The commentators were even joking around that Alonzo would like nothing more than beat him up.
If I was only in an alley alone with Dennis Rodman.
Rodman never said much directly about Mourning during those early games. He didn't need to. The message came across every time he boxed him out, dragged him to the floor, or snatched a rebound from right above his head. The tension built game after game, with both men refusing to back down. The tension finally exploded in the 1997 Eastern Conference semifinals. The Bulls were in control of the series, but in Game 4, the rivalry between Rodman and Mourning boiled over. Midway through the game, a scuffle under the basket turned into a full-on wrestling match. Both players locked up and went down hard. The referees jumped in, and tempers kept flaring even after the play was over.
The league has fined Alonzo Mourning and Dennis Rodman $5,000 each.
Rodman didn't hold back after the game. He dismissed Mourning's entire approach to the series and took shots at both his game and his reputation. Rodman mocked Mourning in the post-game interviews, calling him immature and unprepared for high-stakes basketball. He downplayed the altercation and framed Mourning as someone who let his emotions override his game. Reporters noted Rodman's tone. He didn't sound like he was angry. Instead, his tone was dismissive. He painted Mourning as overpaid, overrated, and too inexperienced to make a real impact in a playoff series. Pat Riley didn't stay quiet either. He accused Rodman of playing dirty and made it clear he saw Rodman as a threat to player safety. Miami pulled out a win in Game 4, but the Bulls closed the series in 5. Chicago kept moving. Mourning and the Heat went home. The bad blood, however, didn't disappear. Rodman's job wasn't to outscore Mourning. It was to frustrate him, wear him down, and throw him off rhythm. He knew exactly how to do it. During key games, he leaned into every mind game. John Sally helped him with the psychological warfare, while Bill Winnington handled some of the physical pressure. Mourning was double-teamed, baited, and pushed from every angle. Michael Jordan later explained it in simple terms. Rodman didn't need the ball to dominate a matchup. According to Jordan, Alonzo was used to being the intimidator, but against Rodman, it was the other way around. Rodman got in his head. That's what tilted the matchup. Years later, Mourning gave Rodman his respect. He didn't hold a grudge. He said Rodman belonged in the conversation with some of the best players of all time.
You got to throw him in the category of some of the greats.
Both men made the Hall of Fame, and while they were never friends, their rivalry became part of the NBA's most physical era. Another legendary center Dennis didn't have a great relationship with was Shaquille O'Neal. Their rivalry started in the mid-1990s, when the Bulls and Magic were fighting for control of the Eastern Conference. In 1996, Rodman was brought in specifically to help Chicago close the gap, and his job in the conference finals was to slow down Shaq. He didn't have the size to match him, but Rodman didn't try to match him. He just made the game as frustrating as possible. Rodman hung on Shaq's hip every play. He bumped him away from the basket, leaned into him on rebounds, and fouled him every time he felt like it. Shaq didn't back down, but he didn't get many clean looks either. At one point in the series, Rodman held him scoreless for an entire half. The fouls and contact added up, and Shaq's frustration became more and more obvious as the series slipped away. The Bulls swept the Magic. Shaq got eliminated, and Rodman moved on to win the championship. But the rivalry didn't stop there. Both men kept talking about each other for years. And what started as playoff intensity eventually turned into something more personal. Rodman and Shaq briefly became teammates on the Lakers in 1999, but the reunion didn't soften anything. Rodman clashed with both Shaq and Kobe almost immediately. He walked into the locker room expecting tension and got exactly that.
They couldn't stand me on that damn team, to be honest with you.
Years later, he admitted he never felt welcome on the team.
I knew the fact that Shaq and Kobe wouldn't like me.
Rodman called both of them jealous and said they resented how much media attention he drew, even when he wasn't playing big minutes.
So Kobe and Shaq would be so envious of me.
From his perspective, they spent more time complaining than competing.
Shaq, they just bitching about everything.
Rodman never adjusted to the team culture. He made it clear he wasn't interested in the Lakers' structure or practice routines.
I gotta take a damn break. I'm not used to this, man. You know, in Chicago, we never did this shit.
Shaq later called Rodman the worst teammate he ever had. He said Rodman didn't show up on time, skipped team functions, and acted like the rules didn't apply to him. The only reason he tolerated it was because Rodman still showed up and pulled down 20 rebounds a night. Even after their time as teammates ended, the tension between Rodman and Shaq lingered. In later interviews, Shaq admitted that some of his frustrations stemmed from jealousy. Rodman's eccentric personality, non-stop media presence, and cult-like fame didn't sit well with him, even though he understood why it worked.
He was a phenomenal athlete, phenomenal.
Shaq called Rodman the most colorful distraction, and that was on a team that already had two of the biggest stars in the league. According to him, Rodman had a way of pulling focus without even trying. Whether it was his outfits, his antics, or his history with the Bulls, he drew the spotlight wherever he went. Shaq did give Rodman credit where it was due. He acknowledged that Rodman worked hard, played smart, and made a real impact on the court. But despite that professional respect, their relationship never really moved past the tension. Rodman had once made a career out of frustrating Shaq in the East, and that history never went away. Their time as teammates didn't lead to reconciliation. It just made it clear they were never going to be on the same page. Of course, Shaq wasn't the only superstar on that team. And wouldn't you know it, he wasn't the only superstar who disliked Dennis Rodman as well. So in fourth place, we have Kobe Bryant. Rodman's time with the Lakers in 1999 didn't last long, but it was long enough to create tension with both of the team's rising stars. Kobe Bryant was still a few years away from his prime, but already operated like a veteran. He practiced with intensity, modeled his game after Jordan, and expected professionalism across the board. Rodman didn't fit that picture.
Like that. Kobe started to emulate his game like Michael.
Rodman said Kobe's game reminded him of MJ in more ways than one.
He probably the closest to Mike than anybody.
He respected the talent, but that didn't mean the two connected. Kobe didn't like that Rodman could bend rules that no one else on the team could. Rodman didn't care what the younger guys thought. He was used to being tolerated, not managed. That dynamic broke things fast, and it was clear from the beginning that it wasn't going to last. Rodman believed his days were numbered the moment tension with Kobe and Shaq hit a certain point. The team had started 10-0 with him, but things unraveled quickly. He blamed the atmosphere, not his performance. Rodman, I think that's the main reason why they cut me.
I think it's the main reason why they cut me.
He didn't hide the friction. According to Rodman, every day felt like a grind. He thought Lakers leadership lacked the authority needed to keep stars in check, and he openly compared the chaos to the structure he was used to in Chicago. He pointed to Kobe's growing influence and the team's shift toward younger leadership. Kobe wasn't the type to quietly tolerate Rodman's behavior, and Rodman knew it. His presence wasn't welcome, and he felt it. No one said it directly, but the tone inside the locker room changed fast. Once the tension became routine, the decision to cut him was just a matter of time. Nearly 15 years later, Rodman was caught on camera outside the W Hotel in Hollywood when a TMZ reporter asked him about Kobe Bryant. Rodman didn't hold back. Instead of offering any polite comment or brushing it off, he exploded. He cursed Kobe out on camera repeatedly without giving any real reason or explanation. The clip went viral. There hadn't been any recent issues between them. They hadn't played together in over a decade. No public argument, no fresh beef. Just a blunt, angry outburst that caught everyone off guard. Even longtime Rodman fans couldn't quite figure out where it came from. By that point, Kobe had already won 5 titles and was a league icon. Rodman was long retired and mostly known for his wild appearances. But the clip added a bitter footnote to their already strained Lakers history. Rodman didn't just get into it with superstars. He beefed with regular players too. And he definitely had the biggest beef with Frank Brickowski. In the 1996 NBA Finals, the most heated exchange came against Seattle's Frank Brickowski. Rodman didn't respect him. He thought Brickowski was trying to copy his role and failing at it.
He tried to be more like me, but very awkward.
The Sonics sent Brickowski in to rough Rodman up and try to shake his focus. After Game 3, Rodman explained that guys like Brickowski always made the same mistake. They got caught up trying to play Rodman's game instead of sticking to their own. Brickowski didn't last long in Game 1. He threw an elbow less than 2 minutes into his shift and picked up 2 technicals and a flagrant. That was enough to get him tossed. Rodman stayed in the game, grabbed 13 rebounds, and ran the floor like nothing happened. He said afterward that Seattle brought Brickowski in to deliver a cheap shot and hoped it would rattle him. Brickowski had a different take. He claimed he wasn't trying to start anything and said the first technical came from talking to Jack Haley on the Bulls bench. He insisted the second came just for looking at the referee, not saying anything. He also denied the elbow was meant to hurt Rodman. He said Rodman sold it and that it was frustrating to get thrown out so fast when he was trying to help his team win. Ron Harper summed it up cleanly. In his words, Rodman was never the one getting rattled. He was the one doing the rattling. Rodman's reputation for mind games reached its peak during the 1996 Finals. Seattle's bench, especially George Karl and Frank Brickowski, thought Rodman had turned manipulating referees into part of his job. Karl complained that Rodman was constantly flopping, baiting technicals, and turning the officials into part of the act. He accused him of mocking the game, taunting the Sonics bench, and using theatrics to steal momentum. And he wasn't wrong. Rodman was doing a lot of strange things to get a reaction out of Brickowski, like changing the color of his eyes with contacts.
Dennis started wearing color contacts.
Trying to do strange things to Frank on the free throw line.
He would be like he was trying to kiss Frank's arm.
Naturally, Brickowski was even more irritated than his coach. After all, Frank was out there on the court with the guy. He said Rodman was confusing chaos with basketball and getting away with it. Frank believed the officials were fooled into thinking every bit of contact was an attack. In Game 3, after a heated exchange under the rim, Brickowski was ejected again.
And then Frank just couldn't take it, man. It was just, the man in him just couldn't allow it.
Rodman had spent the night laughing during free throws, smirking at the Sonics, and waiting for someone to react. When Brickowski got tossed, he tried to explain his side. He said he wasn't trying to hurt anyone. He said he was trying to break free and push Rodman off, not throw him down. To him, it felt like another case of Rodman putting on a show and the refs falling for it. In a post-game interview, Brickowski said that he didn't know what anyone was supposed to do if that kind of flopping kept getting rewarded. The Sonics never figured out how to handle Rodman. By the end of the series, they were still talking more about him than the actual basketball. Seattle's players said Rodman had gotten into their heads. Frank Brickowski tried to play mind games of his own, but Rodman stayed locked in. He later said he had been preparing himself mentally before those home games and made it clear that Seattle had fallen right into his trap. According to him, they got distracted trying to provoke him instead of focusing on the game. Shawn Kemp admitted it too. He said Rodman was the one player they couldn't control, and George Karl didn't hide his frustration either. He said Rodman was smart enough to stay within the rules, but still physical and dirty enough to make everyone want to fight him. Karl believed Rodman was taking advantage of the no-punching rule. He never threw fists, but he knew exactly how to push bodies and buttons without getting suspended. Rodman didn't score, and he didn't need to. He dominated the series by dragging Seattle into his world. The Bulls won the championship, and the Sonics were left with regrets. The second spot is reserved for a player who Rodman fought on and off the court. and that's Karl Malone. Karl Malone wasn't the kind of player you could bully, but Dennis Rodman wasn't the kind of player who cared. Their rivalry peaked during the 1997 and 1998 NBA Finals when the Bulls and Jazz met back-to-back. Malone was the reigning MVP in '97. Rodman was there to make every possession miserable. He boxed him out with two hands. He dragged him off screens. And when Malone posted up, Rodman made sure it didn't look clean. The matchups got physical fast and neither one backed down. Game after game, they were tied up under the rim. Rodman threw his body into Malone on rebounds, then walked away smiling while Malone stared at the officials. In Game 6 of the 1998 Finals, it boiled over. As they scrambled under the basket, Rodman tripped Malone and drew a technical. The play was minor, but the reaction was loud. Everyone watching knew it wasn't just a trip, it was... Chicago's game plan was no secret. Rodman wasn't trying to score. He was there to mess with Malone, one shove at a time, and it worked. The feud didn't end with the finals. It just changed arenas. Right after helping the Bulls win another title, Rodman skipped a mandatory media session and flew out to appear on WCW Monday Nitro. That's where the new stage was set. Rodman teamed up with Hulk Hogan. Malone joined Diamond Dallas Page. Their real-life tension became part of a full-blown wrestling storyline.
Started in Utah, finished it in San Diego.
That was Malone's line leading into WCW's Bash at the Beach, a major pay-per-view event scheduled for July 1998. It was booked as a tag team grudge match, Hogan and Rodman versus Malone and DDP. And unlike most celebrity matches, this wasn't just a promotional appearance. Malone took it seriously. He trained, learned moves, and committed to the part. The match itself was pure entertainment. There were body slams, taunts, and signature finishers. Rodman leaned into his villain role, selling every hit and cheating whenever he could. Malone kept a straight face and stayed in character. The crowd ate it up. Financially, it worked. Bash at the Beach became WCW's biggest show of the year, all built around a basketball rivalry that refused to end quietly. For all the hard fouls, trash talk, and technicals, the Rodmans and Malone's rivalry didn't end in bitterness. Years after the back-to-back finals and the WCW spectacle, Rodman spoke with clear respect. He didn't downplay Malone's game or rewrite their history. If anything, he gave Malone more credit than he ever had during their active years.
Karl Malone's a beast, man. He's probably the best power forward I've ever seen, man.
He also clarified that the feud didn't reflect their real-life dynamic. Behind the scenes, the two had built a friendship that survived the chaos.
And if people don't understand, brother, me and Karl Malone have been friends for a long time, man.
That added a layer to what fans had seen during those high-stakes moments. The wrestling match, with all its over-the-top pageantry, ended up as a symbolic close to a rivalry that had stretched across seasons and spotlighted two of the game's most physical players. What began as a series of calculated mind games and playoff brawls turned into mutual recognition. Both men walked away with titles, attention, and a rivalry that now stands as one of the most famous in NBA Finals history. Those were some of the greatest players ever, but undoubtedly, the player Dennis Rodman hated the most was the greatest of them all, and that's none other than Larry Bird. Dennis Rodman didn't come into the league trying to make friends. He came in trying to prove he belonged. But in the mid-1980s, there was one player who made him feel completely outmatched Larry Bird. When the Pistons and Celtics clashed in the Eastern Conference playoffs, Chuck Daly gave Rodman the task of guarding Boston's biggest star. It wasn't a choice, it was an assignment, and Rodman wasn't ready for what came next.
I was frustrated because guess what? I got my ass whooped by this kid.
Rodman had the energy, the length, and the motor. None of it worked. Bird didn't beat him with speed or strength. He beat him with timing, footwork, and relentless trash talk. Rodman was known for getting under people's skin. Bird was one of the few who turned that strategy around.
I was just wondering why this guy's so good.
Rodman wasn't the only defender who left confused. Bird's mind games were constant. Rodman recalled moments when he thought he was smothering him on defense, only to hear Bird yelling across the floor. Rodman would later explain the situation, saying, "I would be all over him, trying to deny him the ball, and all Larry was doing was yelling at his teammates, 'I'm open. Hurry up before they notice nobody's guarding me.'" It didn't stop there. In the 1987 Eastern Conference Finals, Bird casually made a left-handed shot over Rodman just to prove he could. That moment stayed with him. The rivalry between Rodman and Bird took a sharp turn after the 1987 Eastern Conference Finals. Following a tough playoff loss, Rodman made a comment that went beyond basketball.
Larry was a black guy. He just to be a regular old basketball player.
He didn't make the remark in private or in passing. It happened during a post-game interview and immediately caused a stir. Isaiah Thomas stood by him and added his own comment.
If he was black, he'd be just another good guy.
The league stepped in. Both players were forced to apologize. The media ran with the story, and the backlash was swift. Rodman had already built a reputation as a disruptor. Now his name was tied to a national controversy. Isaiah's involvement only intensified the situation. Bird didn't escalate. He told reporters he wasn't personally offended, and that if Isaiah said it was meant as a joke, he had no problem moving on. That approach helped keep things from getting worse. Years later, Isaiah admitted Bird could have ruined his career by choosing to speak out more forcefully. Instead, Bird stayed calm, and the moment passed without formal punishment. The controversy stayed with both players. Reporters brought it up for years, and Rodman's name was always attached to it. It didn't change how Bird played, but it changed how people talked about the rivalry. What started as a basketball feud now had a different weight to iTone that kept resurfacing long after the series ended. You're probably wondering, does he respect Larry Bird now? Although Rodman does admit that he was frustrated by Larry's and Boston's domination over him and his team, he still doesn't think Larry was all that great. So much so that when asked how Bird would fare in today's game, Rodman said he wouldn't even be playing the league.
Larry Bird playing this era, I think he'd be in Europe.
Yes, you heard that correctly. Dennis Rodman honestly believes that Bird's game simply isn't cut for today's rules and players.
Today's world? Oh, hell no.
That's Rodman's evaluation. He suggests Bird's accolades may have been tied more to perception than actual dominance against the toughest competition. He refuses to soften his stance, even decades later. Is this just pinned-up frustration that comes with losing, or does Rodman really think this? Of course, with Rodman, it's not easy to say. However, considering that Detroit ended up beating and outlasting the Celtics in the late 80s, it's a safe bet that Denis might just think this. There's a good reason we put Larry Legend at the top of the list. Dennis Rodman built a career on getting into opponents' heads, but some rivalries clearly stuck in his own. From bruising showdowns with Hall of Famers to feuds with role players and teammates alike, Rodman never left things quiet. Even decades later, he still brings up the same names. Some respected him, some despised him. However, none forgot him. Who do you think hated Rodman the most? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more.